Did you send anything to Josh already?
I did.
He's saying, has anybody heard from anybody yet? I'm like,
Hold on, we're live. Hey everybody, welcome to the stream. This week we got a new face, maybe a familiar face. We got Daniel Lieske.
Say it, an old face.
An old face.
An old wrinkly face.
Oops, let me turn off my... There we go. Duplicate sounds, not good.
Oh, is it from me? I can use headphones.
No, it was me. I had the YouTube thing open and then it started spouting nonsense at me. Let's see. So you guys go ahead and keep and talk. I'm going to be doing some things on the behind the curtain to try to, I don't know, get this I don't know, the definition out correctly, and I'll tweet it and stuff like that. Well, that didn't work. Come on, guys.
what happened? What happened? I'm sorry.
You guys. Hey, there's Josh. Welcome, Josh. Feel free to talk because we're streaming now. So go ahead and make lively conversation because I'm going to be doing stuff in the background here.
Conversation.
Talk to talk things.
Talk.
All of the stuff. So, Daniel.
Yes, since a few more people have joined, let me just quickly say hello to everyone. To Doug and
hello,
and
Daniel.
Josh, right? Josh, yeah.
Yep.
Jason invited me to join this live stream sessions on your. I think it's midday, right? Lunchtime for most people.
Yeah, it's like just after 2 p.m.
2 p.m. Yeah.
This is Doug.
Yeah, here over in Germany it's 9 p.m., which is it's actually a comfortable time for me to do streaming because the kids are in bed and I have some.
I hear that.
It's my normal work time. It's super late at night.
Hello?
Hey, Steven.
Hello.
Steven.
Hey, Steven.
What's up, guys?
Not much. Just trying to get the ball rolling here.
I'm still wrapping up a couple things before I'm finished, but I'm basically done for the day.
So, Daniel, I've heard your voice before on Brubaker. This is Doug on Jason's podcast. I heard you on.
That's true. Yeah. In the very beginning, when Jason was starting his YouTube channel, I guess it was. We had the Making Comics podcast, and
that one.
Did it together, several episodes long. At some time it kind of died off, but I don't know. We had some other occasions where we joined forces. Like I remember that we did a joint Kickstarter live stream, Jason.
Yeah.
A few years ago when we had both had Kickstarter campaigns live, and we had this combined stretch goal. I think when both campaigns reached a certain level.
Yeah.
We had a live stream between us too, and all.
Yeah, I love your comic. I don't know if I was on the Kickstarter or not, but I know I followed your comic for a while. That one giant long strip comic.
Yeah, right.
It's fantastic. I might have even emailed you, but I think before I did my first Kickstarter on my sketchbook, I think I might have emailed you asking for advice.
Really?
Yeah.
Did he answer?
I would remember that.
I think so. I'm pretty sure.
I mean, Dr. TenNapel asking me for advice.
Well,
I would mark that in my calendar, I guess.
That's before I slaughtered my own Kickstarter. So I'm just saying, I was real scared back then. I called Jason for advice. I said, Jason, tell me exactly what to do. He and Jake Parker.
Yeah.
or a couple guys. So they were very helpful.
I just remember looking at Wormworld Saga and hating everything about my life.
Yeah, I know, right? Going, man, this
Just
guy
being
spent
like-
a lot of time on this.
I was like,
he really
well-
cares about this comic, is what I thought.
Jeez. I was just like, man, it's a gorgeous comic, Daniel. It's a gorgeous comic, and I enjoy reading it as well.
That's
So
super
I don't
nice.
want to just heap the praise on the art because we always want to be praised for our writing too, and the whole thing's just great. It's awesome.
Is that this project you're still working on, Daniel?
Yeah, it's a continuous project. Although I'm working on it with well, how to phrase it? The business model is changing every year or so. Like, I guess for what that's true for everyone. And so I'm always work in the pacing that the budget for the project allows me to do.
Fair
And
enough.
currently I have switched to pretty much 100% crowd-funded production. So right at the moment, the level of my Patreon campaign is pretty much dictating the pacing of the project. Currently, I have a fixed production day every week, funded by Patreon, and yeah, I'm trying to build that up.
Are you doing work outside of your comic? Or is it your
Yeah. I'm working on projects, on freelance projects,
Okay.
mainly in game development, because that's the industry that I'm originally coming from, and yeah, that's basically the bread and butter jobs. And
Those are
for some time I was able to work pretty much 100% on Wormworld Saga through publishing deals, but my publisher in Germany went through some pretty radical changes, management change and everything, and their support changed too, and now I have to figure out
Gender
ways
change.
to project in different ways.
I'm terrible.
To interrupt you just a second, Daniel,
Yeah.
Kazu just joined us. Welcome, Kazu.
Oh,
Thanks for
Can you hear
being here.
Oh,
Hey, guys.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
You
I
guys hear
think
me?
Yeah.
I think we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey,
good.
man.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I'm not using a mic or anything. I'm just using the iMac. So I haven't done that yet for one of these chats anyway.
Sounds good. Well, if anyone's background noise just gets too noisy, I might mute you, but I'll try to let you know too. But so far I don't think that will happen. But anyway, go back to what you were saying, Daniel. Sorry to interrupt you.
yeah. What did I say? Yeah. No, basically I was rambling a little bit about project financing and stuff. But yeah, actually, that's pretty much the status quo. I relied a lot on money from book publishing in the last few years, which was awesome. I had awesome support on that front, but when the management at Tokyo Pop in Germany switched or changed, that support dwindled, and now I have to make other things work.
Man, I'm looking through Wormworld Saga for the first time in a while, and you're a disgusting monster.
I know. It's amazing, isn't it? I love it. I absolutely love it.
That's,
man.
I guess, nice to say.
Yeah, that's
There really is kind of a anger to a level of murder when you see another guy's amazing work, and just like, that is so amazing. It infuriates me. It makes me feel small, and it makes me feel like I've been wasting my time. I'm like, oh man, I should.
Come on, it's not that bad.
It is. I just had like a 1 hour conversation with a friend I went to college with, and we're just going like, what is beauty, and why make anything, when anything you do will never be good enough. Like we have this frustration where you never sit there and you never feel just satisfied and go, it's like this pursuit of beauty that is just outside of the periphery of your eye, and I'll never reach it. And everything I do just feels like just pop garbage that goes in the trash. Like I just want something better.
Yeah, but that's not my fault. I mean, we could all have stopped making comics the day someone invented comics and defined it. We will never reach the genius of an Otomo or or what have you. So I don't know. I know every artist knows exactly that feeling. I mean, I know that myself. I just today or yesterday I discovered an artist on ArtStation or what who actually did the artwork that I would strive to do in my free time, but he does it 100 times better than I could ever achieve. So,
and he's 14. He's 14 and self-taught from like
maybe
from a Philippine tribe, from some tribe in the Philippines. Or something.
Yeah, maybe. So that's always a problem, but I don't know. I don't know if being oblivious of all the other people would actually be better. Maybe it would be, but in the end, you have to ignore the stuff anyway. And have to do your own stuff.
I think I learned so much from others that I love getting to see people who are way better than me. But after a while, I feel like there's these, when I go to CTN or something or Comic-Con, and I've never seen more great artists in my life. And on one hand, it angers me because they're just drawing half nude furry stuff. And I go like, what a waste. Like, this is why we got here. And then number two, I'm humbled because I go, that guy is 100 times better than me. He's 19 years old and no one knows about him just because he doesn't do Earthworm Jim. It's like people, and so I get away with drawing with 1/10 of his talent. You know what I mean? It's like I get angry when it's not a meritocracy. It's not fair that these other people, I'm going like, oh, I'm just going to go back to my studio and bang out some more Earthworm Jims for Kickstarter. And that guy, like, no one will get to know him because he's merely an amazing artist.
Yeah.
You know?
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? It's just, I mean, it's the old struggle, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's not getting better. I mean, I clearly remember reading a book a few years ago. I won't tell you what the title of the book is yet because it would kind of ruin the punchline. But it was in this book, the author stated in the foreword that we are facing very difficult times for artists because the abundance of visual material and visual inspiration will make everything feel useless that we do, and by being able to see the works of the masters from all around the world, we will never be able to achieve our own artistic thing.
Wow.
And it was a book written in 1911.
Yeah.
By Harold Steed. Harold Steed, I think it is. The Practical Science of Drawing or something like that. And he was referring to color print. And that people were able to see artwork that was not in a museum around the corner, but they could see artwork from museums from Europe or whatever, And when I was reading that, and it was a time when I just started to join online forums where everyone kind of posted their daily artwork, I thought, man, would you have lived 50 years longer, you would be in for a surprise.
Yeah. But he was almost right if you see how art has gone downhill from 1911. I mean, all the greats that we study outside of the modern artists are like, Bouguereau from the late 1800s and Michelangelo. I mean, modernity, the proliferation of widespread art and even art education hasn't made many modern masters. I mean, people who will stand the test of time. Everyone we study is like Shakespeare 500 years ago, Mozart, 500 years ago. Bouguereau and all this, and Moby Dick, 150 years ago.
It does feel though like.
But yeah. But I would argue, against that actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that the thing is that art education and the art authorities, I would say, the curators of the museums, they just are very slow in acknowledging new forms of art.
Sure.
I mean, you were referring, for example, to composers of classical music.
Yeah.
I think that the development just shifted. Today you have the composer genius in film scoring and film music.
Yeah.
You have wonderful work there, but they are not acknowledged as art music. So they are not.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Is they're not acknowledged by the art critics and associations.
Yeah.
As true art. And I go to the symphony. We have symphony passes here in Nashville, and man, the music, the modern composers are terrible. Like, flush it down the toilet, terrible. Dissonant chords and no melody, and they're not trying to make beauty. They're trying to make something that is shocking. And then they play some Dubois, 100-year-old piece, and I almost start crying. It's amazing. I go, why can't we have this? And then I went to that John Williams. They did a John Williams retro of him, and he conducted, and it was amazing. But there was always kind of this backhanded thing where this is not true classical music. This is just movie music.
Yeah. Although modern soundtracks are basically the modern classical symphonies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of that stuff was created for theater in the first place. And so, it's like I mostly listen to soundtracks. So like I'll finish a movie and I'm like, oh man, that movie was great, but what about that soundtrack? And like that's what I get. Like even like the Cloverfield Paradox, which I wasn't a huge fan of the movie, but the soundtrack is amazing. Like Bear McCreary is fantastic.
I kind of like the movie too. But...
The movie was fine.
Yeah, but even
for a movie I wasn't
soundtrack,
expecting and got out of nowhere, yes, it's.
But even the modern soundtrack is not creating a new form of music. John Williams is largely influenced by Holst Planets and Tchaikovsky and all these great guys. They're not inventing a new sound the way that like Beethoven did. Even the modern soundtrack, as great of an art form as it is incredibly derivative of what was made over the last 300 years. So if I was going to do something great today, I'd end up going, I'm going to carve a man out of 18 feet of marble, like the David. But I'd just be imitating Michelangelo's greatness.
Well, I think if you go into stuff like, then you've got stuff like, I think the Stranger Things soundtracks are really good, and they kind of bring something new to that. They got that modern.
I didn't think it was really good. But...
You didn't care for them?
I thought it was effective as a soundtrack. I thought it was very effective for Stranger Things, but I was not impressed with that kind of Moog-sounding, droning 80s synth thing.
It has some great moments here and there, but it's true. It's not like listening to a John Williams soundtrack where every track is kind of super cool and wonderfully composed. It's super. The Stranger Things soundtrack is very nice in conjunction with the images and the feeling and the mood of the show. But as a listening experience, I have those albums both seasons, but I don't listen to them often because the coolest thing is maybe the main theme. It gives you the chills. And the rest is not super cool music to just listen to it. I don't know.
The biggest problem with them is that they're fine, but they tend to be, every song on it tends to be within under a minute in length. And so you can never let a theme sort of play its length out. And when it does, it's great. Like in the second soundtrack or the second season, there's the song when you see 11 again. And it bridges into the end credit scene. So it's like a 3-minute song. And that song is great. But a lot of them are like, hey, as soon as you start to get into it, it's over. All right, moving on. But I do agree with you that. But I'm just thinking of a composer that was trying to do something that had a newer flair to it. It's as close as I can think of, because it is a lot of it's just kind of typical stuff.
I mean, I think that music and classical music is very special because they stick to this classic orchestral system.
Yeah.
And as long as they are using the classic orchestra, the possibilities are kind of limited. I mean, I think that in the end, people like Stravinsky and
I love Stravinsky.
yeah,
the Firebird's probably my favorite piece.
Mine is The Rite of Spring is like my favorite piece from him.
Yeah.
But the thing is that people like him, and this is decades ago, they have actually done everything that you could do with the classical orchestra that is not normal. I remember that he used orchestration, instrumentalization that was completely uncommon. He used instruments in the wrong register and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And as long as you're sticking to the orchestra, you won't really be able to create something new like maybe a Beethoven did, because back in Beethoven times, the potential of the orchestra was not yet fully developed, and the people that compose classical music or art music today with the orchestra, they can't do anything else than deconstructing harmony and deconstructing rhythm and stuff like that, because there's nothing else to do if you don't change the instruments. And I think that if you what I really enjoyed is coming back to film music, I enjoy the soundtracks of Jerry Goldsmith, for example, because he was someone who worked with the orchestra, but also introduced electronic instruments. Or if you listen to the Alien soundtrack, for example, he had these echo effects. He had a tape machine constructed specifically for this effect, and he experimented with the orchestra and new instrument effects. So. And I guess nowadays, if you want to hear stuff that sounds interesting, you have to go to people like Hans Zimmer, maybe, who is not super great on the melodic thing, but he creates distinctive sounds. I mean, if you listen to the Interstellar soundtrack, for example, it's very minimalistic from a melodic standpoint, but it's super cool from a sound and mood standpoint.
It's probably my favorite soundtrack ever. It's so good.
I listen to it very often, and I know that it is very disliked by soundtrack buffs. So if you read the reviews on sites like Film Tracks, for example, they despise the Hans Zimmer sound. Because for them, it's everything what's wrong with film music today. And to a certain extent, I can understand their arguments. There's a world between Hans Zimmer and John Williams, if you call from the artistic side. But what you cannot deny is that Hans Zimmer creates very distinct moods and atmosphere in his music, and they work. However simple the melodies might be, his instruments and everything, and his sound design is just super interesting.
He does his job.
He does his job, yeah.
He does his job.
It's
I was listening to the Phil Glass's version of when he wrote a bunch of pieces with Dave Bowie. Heroes. He did a bunch of suites of that. Man, there's one of them that I just play over and over again. That is found Phil Glass, and I'm not a big Phil Glass fan otherwise, but this one song, Heroes, is pretty amazing with an orchestra. It's just a loop. It's just, Phil. That's what Glass always does, is loops.
I like 21 Pilots.
21.
Sorry, I just derailed you guys.
No. We were digging far too deep into that rabbit hole,
Well, we were talking about artists that you kind of look at and you just marvel at. Josh and I were hanging out last night, And I asked him to pull out his Akira volumes, and we're just both sitting at the table like, how,
Yeah.
how, this is amazing. How is anyone better than this?
Yeah.
It's just so insanely good. And it's not even, we were talking about, you know, the level of detail that goes into his drawings, and that's certainly a part of it. You know that he has assistants and stuff like that that help. But it's not even that. It's the way he makes something as detailed as it is feel like it's so full of motion and energy anyway.
Yeah.
Like, he blows up a city better than anybody. Like,
Yeah.
better than just about maybe even a Hollywood blockbuster does. It's so good.
I'll even copy his work because I love Akira and Appleseed. I flat out tried to ape the explosions from those one for one in some of my books. I cannot capture what those guys are doing. It just seems so easy, and it's not.
It's frightening.
Even copying them, I'm going, oh man, this guy came up with this the first time and he nailed it, and I can't do it.
That's true.
I wonder how much of it is the assistants and how much of it is him specifically.
Well, you can't hide him. I don't give credit. I mean, just like Kazu uses assistants, but they're under the use of the main. They keep the main guy drawing the main stuff, so he's not sitting there drawing every little window in a building, you know.
Right.
And I mean,
Is that true, Kazu?
Yeah, I've seen his work where he did not use assistants.
Sometimes. I've seen your pencils before. They can get pretty detailed.
Well, you know, actually, I actually don't. Sometimes when I feel like I'm not going to be able to spend the time to articulate a really detailed drawing that I have in my head and I want it to be done clearly, then I'll draw the whole thing. But I noticed that most of the time, if I just let Jason do the detail work and I just let him free, the painting just looks better, and the scale of it is bigger. There's more energy in it because he's, you know, putting more of himself in there, and so I've learned to back off more over time, and then just spend more time on the writing. That's what takes most of the time. It's actually doing research these days.
Well, and that's the true strength, Kazu. You're more the graphic novelist as a storyteller. You're more like a director, and you don't have to. All these artists, including Otomo and those guys, they don't have to do everything because it's a storytelling medium, and a storyteller doesn't mean that you have to like letter the whole thing or anything. It's like you gotta tell the story.
Yeah, I think that's like the reason we see like I don't know about you guys, but I've seen a lot of super talented illustrators who love comics, and they start making like just beautiful, like some beautiful one shots or something like that. But then they realize that there's a whole second like set of skills within comics that is entirely separate from illustration, and it's almost hidden. You know, like the act of creating thumbnails is in itself, I think, where most of the art form takes place. Yeah. And the art that actually comes, like the actual rendering of that art is a really separate skill.
I see it as a tier model. I mean, you start as a one-man show and do it as long as
Daniel, you sound like a Dalek right now.
I thought it was my thing. I was like, let's move this around, figure out what's going on.
Well, was I shut up by the compression or what?
Yeah, your connection.
Yeah, it's still garbled up.
Oh.
I have to keep my mic away from my mouse because I keep getting muted. Because if I talk too loud, my microphone mutes itself, which is helpful.
You know, I have a standing desk, and last time we talked, I was getting the worst connection issues, and I just moved my standing desk to a little bit higher, and I think it's catching my Wi-Fi better. So.
You bent the clothes hanger the other way.
Yeah. Just gotta hold on, guys. Just gotta hand crank my Wi-Fi into place.
So you know you got a good internet.
Hey Daniel, if you want to turn off your video, that might help your sound just for a little bit until it clears up.
I can try that.
Kazu, I just want to say hi. It's been
Yeah, hey guys. I
Sandra,
just stuck in here because I didn't know what was going on. It was already started.
Man.
Hi, Stephen.
Yeah.
Yeah, hey guys. It's good to see you.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Jump in with a question from the comments. Someone is asking.
Go for it.
He says, "Can I ask if you can get a job in the game industry if you make comics? Is it good like a portfolio?" You guys understand that question?
I would
He
not
wants
be
a
qualified
job in the
to
game
answer that.
industry by making comics.
Yeah, I think so. Can you get a job in the game industry if you make comics? And your comics are like your portfolio?
I don't see why not.
I think it would really help.
I mean, I would say you can get a job in the game industry if you're good at your craft, and if your comic shows that you're good at your craft, then
Yeah, there you go.
why not?
Mm-hmm. I'm still just
It's
trying
kind
to
of
get
like
more work in comics.
It's the good, it's the being good part it's the part that is proof that you don't need a comic though, because the comic isn't the magic bullet. It's the being good, whether if you're making a comic or whatever in your portfolio. So the comic medium itself doesn't help you get a game job. It's the being good that you put in your comic and your game portfolio that gets you the game job. I think. Not that I could get a game job these days.
A lot of my assistants went on to work in games. After working on Amulet out of school. So yeah. They go hand in hand, I think.
Yeah. There's a huge overlap.
Every time I hear that sound, I think somebody's blowing their nose really hard.
What is that?
I think
I don't know.
it's Kazu's pencil sharpener.
Oh, okay.
It sounds like it's like a TIE fighter.
Yeah, I'll do it again.
Yeah, what is that? That's awesome.
So I'm doing commissions for this Kickstarter campaign, and I do not like drawing pen-up shots. Like, I just want to make more comics. This is so hard. Like, give me a room, and I've got to draw that room, I can do it. But if it's like, draw a guy in a cool pose, I'm like, I don't know where to start or where to stop.
Haha, Kickstarter.
Oh man, it's not only a Kickstarter problem. I'm actually preparing a original painting for my Patreon channel. So there it can get you too.
Well, I'm trying to like avoid the headshot of a person standing there and do something interesting, and that's where it gets kind of complicated. It feels like
I'm the same way. I can come up with a dynamic pose if there's a reason for it, but if you just tell me to draw something dynamic, I choke.
That's why I only do Earthworm Jim heads, because I can't draw anything else. So. I have to do 30 original commissions. They'll take me as long as to do like 300 Earthworm Jims. It'll take me to do 30 of the originals. They'll send pictures, really bad pictures of their family, and have me try to do a portrait based on bad pictures.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always fun.
Oh man, I'm going. This is going to be terrible, because usually if I'm going to do a portrait of someone, I got to take the picture.
Mm-hmm.
And on Kickstarter, they send you these really bad. Here's a picture of my dad from 1920 coming back from the war. It's all grainy. Impossible.
When I did portrait training out of college, you get that too, where people were like, let me provide you the pictures, and the flash would just wreck the face, and because no one takes pictures without flash, so you're just looking at this flat form. Yeah. Like, I get no sense for how deep their nose is, like anything. And so had to insist that I show up and take pictures or do sketches or something.
I was in college. I did a drawing of my grandparents from when they first got married, and I gave it to them for Christmas, and I couldn't tell in the drawing if my grandpa had a mustache or not. So I just kind of drew what I saw, and when I gave it to them, my grandma said I drew too much of the mustache, and my grandpa said you didn't get enough of my mustache. So.
It's like the John Singer Sargent quote, a portrait's a painting of someone with a little something wrong with the mouth.
Yeah.
You know, Doug, I was thinking about, because you were saying how it feels like the modern artist, that we've lost some of these masters, but at least when I was in college, which admittedly was a little while ago at this point, I actually really felt like there was a real resurgence happening with an appreciation of guys like Sargent and Everett Raymond Kensler and a lot of these guys. Yeah, it feels like there's sort of a return to beauty in a lot of I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of the stuff that's all over the place, but I knew a ton of people that were like, we need to get back to just great art, you know?
Yeah. There is a small resurgence.
Are you guys checking website like ArtStation or something like that at all? You know, all these CG artists, computer video effects industry portal websites?
I was thinking,
I
do. I was thinking, yeah, I mean, you got guys like Jamie Jones, who is insane. But I mean, I was thinking more of traditional, you know, kind of fine art painters, not necessarily the digital stuff.
But I think
mainly in the figure world and stuff like that.
It just went there, you know.
Yeah.
You know, like when we said that the classical music has moved to film music. I think the traditional painting has just transitioned to digital art and entertainment artwork.
Yeah,
I mean, look at the guys sculpting dragons and female warriors and what you have in ZBrush, and to the most minute detail, and look at all the environments painted. I mean, that's the stuff that was done in marble a few hundred years ago, but on steroids, you know. I mean,
it's true.
I won't say that it has the same. Well, it's an interesting discussion actually. If it has the same artistic value, the thing is, I think there's an abundance of skilled artists today compared to the earlier centuries. And you can find just anything, and it's absolutely incredible to see what kind of talent comes out of all the countries that weren't on our radar in the Middle Ages. Like, if I mean, go to a site like ArtStation or DrawCrowd or whatever, and you see a ton of Chinese guys painting. Like, I mean, you just can't believe it. And well, it's all digital, true, but I think that's where this kind of artistic visions went to.
Right.
And what I feel extremely shocking every time I look at movie credits, for example, is all the people that don't take part in those, you know, online portals. I mean, if I see in a movie credits in a high video effects movie, I see the credits of like 10 video effect houses with hundreds of digital artists. I always think, man, the stuff that we see on the internet is only the tip of the iceberg. It's the stuff of people that are either not working in the industry yet and try to show off so to get hired, or it's people that work in the industry and find some spare time to do some private personal stuff. But the big majority of stuff that is done that ends up in the movies, people can't show that all year long. So it's hidden under the surface.
Yeah.
It's true. It is a shame how much probably don't get to see. That's why I end up collecting a lot of the art of books, is because it is sort of the best place to see some of that really good stuff.
Yeah.
And it's not collected too much outside of it.
I always liked the DreamWorks animated movie stuff. I wish the movies looked like those books, because the books, the Peabody and Sherman book and stuff, they just look amazing.
Yeah, Jason, get it together.
Hey, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, Jason, don't tell him.
I
Well,
did.
see, the
I
problem
told
is
him.
Jason left. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's why I walked out.
They were like, "You would sit. You're not using my stuff."
Jason was like, the burger doesn't look
Taking
the
it.
way it does on the menu. I'm out of here.
That's right. It's like they give you the drive-through burger on the screen.
I was taking, gosh, I don't want to get his name wrong. I have to look it up. But I was taking a class through Schoolism on environment design, and one of the guys who was teaching it was it was a DreamWorks artist. Had worked with DreamWorks, and he was showing the difference between the concept art that they would make, and then showing what it would look like when the animator sent it back to him, and like how drastically different it was. And then they'd have to go through and alter the image that was sent to them and say like, no, make it look like this, and then it would come back looking much different. But it was I never would have realized that kind of something that happened, but it makes sense how much gets changed. Dinner's ready.
Right?
All right, I figured this pinup thing better. I put him in an environment. Who would have thought? Who would have thought you draw the character in an environment and it makes it better?
Background.
It's seems like a given, but was not initially coming to me. Kazu has Amulet coming along. How much longer do you have production on it?
Well, I'm way over. So I'm just trying to get it done. That's all. Yeah, it's. I've got 2 sequences that I'm drawing right now. I've got to finish half of one, and then all of the final one, and that's out of 14 sequences, I think, or 15. So.
I think I've told you a bit on Twitter, but I really liked the direction you're taking the story in the last one.
Oh yeah.
I was like, all right, this is going in some directions I didn't see coming. I'm excited about it.
It's made it pretty difficult, but yeah. I think you'll like this next one.
Nice.
How many pages you doing, Kazu? What's your page rate?
For the books, for each book.
Yeah.
The final book is 208 pages, but I do 200 pages of comics. And I think that's where
Are you doing like a page a day, or what's your rate?
No, I mean, some days I do no pages a day. Some days I have to do 10. So it really depends on it all revolves around the story, the writing, and trying to figure things out. Jason working on the colors, along with a couple of really talented painters that are helping him out. That gives me time to consider the story a little bit more. So I just sort of take a look at how far behind they are, behind me. And I'm basically laying down the track for the steam engine that's coming down the pipe,
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes, I mean, okay, so I'll put it this way. The first half of every book is the hardest part, because it's like inductive reasoning, right? It's like I'm creating the problem. Designing the problem is so much harder than solving the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So the second half of the book goes really fast because I've already been thinking about the problem over the course of the year, and so drawing isn't really that big of a deal. That's actually not. I've gotten a style down and a system in place that allows me to draw pretty quickly. I scrap pages all the time, and I just wanted to treat it like dribbling a basketball or shooting a basketball, and not worry about it too much. So the drawing goes pretty quick.
I think I kind of have a similar struggle with, well, not a struggle, but yeah, it's a struggle with Space Boy, where it's like it's kind of like you set up a ton of fireworks, and then for you got to set it all up. So for the big explosion at the end, but you have to do it in a way that's entertaining and satisfying for the audience, so that like I think there's a Hollywood term like hope in the pool or something like that, where it's like you want to make something really interesting for your reader to enjoy while you're setting up all the exposition and all the back things and all the stuff that's going to blow up at the end. And a lot of my time is just spent setting up fireworks, essentially.
Yeah, knowing what not to put on the page is sometimes more difficult than figuring out what to put on the page.
Yeah.
So how do you imply everything else beyond the panel, right? That's the trick.
Well, I just finished my next graphic novel and sent it to Scholastic, asking them if they'll publish it. And I had no idea if it was any good or not. Like, I had my kids read it, and I go, "What do you think?" Like, I have no idea. I'm, at some point, I can tell a story and do my best, but man, by the time I'm done with it, I could not. If someone told me make it better, I wouldn't know exactly what to do. I could make it different, but I'd need someone else to tell me how to make it better. Because I put everything in it, and now I'm lost because I'm so close to it now. Like, I can almost not tell one page from another.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Also, make it better isn't very good feedback.
Yeah. I mean, we all want it to be better. I have no idea. If I knew how to do it, I'd do it.
Hey, Kazu,
Yeah.
with your story, since it's so long, did you have the stories, the parts that you're on right now, really loosely figured out when you started the whole epic adventure?
Yeah, I have like checkpoints in mind.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a bit like slalom racing or something. So I'm trying to get to those flags and checkpoints if I can, and try to get there and then move through it and move on. It's like something that like Jason said recently. He was kind of shocked that something I told him when we started working on the project has come to fruition in the story, because he didn't believe me. Because he started working on the book on Amulet 2, and I told him that eventually I was going to, that in the story that we would have like giant robots in space, like Gundams have. he thought I was joking, but I wasn't. And so we're there. And it fits. It works thematically. I did set it up from the very beginning for the characters, so I did think about it. I didn't know it was going to be this long. If I did, I don't think I would have started. I thought it was going to be 300 pages total. And
Wow.
yeah, no, what is it? This will be past 1,600.
Wow.
I was thinking about that actually last night. Like, one of the things, and Doug, it goes back to what you were saying with Newts last week, and I think it relates to Amulet, but one of the things that I loved about the last volume of Amulet is, and what Doug was talking about, is it takes the idea of moving something that feels like it's a fantasy world, like a make-believe place, and then it grounds it into a reality cosmically. And it's like, no, this is happening somewhere in a legitimate space, just like what you were saying, Doug, with the story, the beat you're asked to take out. And I think that's so much more powerful in the end. It feels like it has weighty consequences that matter to everybody rather than just to this story. And that's sort of the feeling I got from the last Amulet book too, is that it's all really happening in a tangible place that you could go to if you had the means, rather than just a fantasy place that they happen to stumble into.
Right. Yeah, actually, I was listening to that your guys' last session, and I love what you said about that, about the Pleiades. Doug, idea, the reverse Orion.
Oh yeah.
Why did you take that out?
I know, right?
Why did you take that out? That was awesome.
Sailor and
That
Adam
was
Brown.
awesome.
Go yell at them. Yell at Sailor and Adam Brown next time.
Oh man.
It was especially Sailor. He was like, "You got it. I just don't think this belongs in here."
Really?
Really?
You know, he's got. I mean, David has a really good sense about things, though. He's one of the best. So
That's what I mean. Is I've disobeyed him before and been totally wrong. Like I was totally right when I did.
Yeah, he's usually right.
Before.
I guess I'd have to see it, but the concept's great.
Yeah. It'd be awesome. I mean, it does break a rule, kind of, because then you start asking yourself, okay, well, why are these newts speaking English on the other side of the galaxy? You know what I mean? Like, it starts asking those kinds of dumb questions suddenly.
Well, it's just translated for us. We don't know that it's actually English.
Yeah,
like, there's not English in Star Wars, like really. We're just like, oh,
it's
we
common.
understand the English. Yeah, it's common.
So my next story, I think, is going to take place in Germany during World War II, and I need to handle dialogue between Germans and Americans, but the lead character can't understand what the German is saying. So there's like a German speech bubble, and I didn't want to translate it into German. I just want him to speak English, but my idea is to put a double line around the bubble and put at the beginning of the book a little chyron that says all speech inside of a black bubble means the other characters can't understand the language. Do you think that would work?
Don't they already have? There's already a way to, you know, one of those. I've seen in comics when they have people speak different languages, they use
just like nonsense
carrot
symbols and
symbol. What is it?
A carrot symbol?
Oh yeah, like they put like a double angle hyphen,
about.
whatever that symbol's called, the greater than less than symbols.
Yeah.
Here, I'll write it in the chat.
You put it in the carrot symbol, within that symbol?
Yeah, that indicates they're speaking German or something. It's like a translated language, basically.
Yeah.
I think that already existing like that.
Two different languages, they're having a conversation about each other, but they don't understand what each other says. But the reader gets to see what both say, and I think that's really interesting.
You know how they did it in Asterix? When Asterix visited Germany, they put all the German texts in this old German fracture font. You know this. Well, I guess internationally you would call it the Nazi font or something like that. So that's
they have a Nazi font. I gotta get this.
No. It's just this medieval German fracture calligraphy, you know, which the
kind of like our gang graffiti, kind of like an old English looking, like a. Like
well, you know what it is.
Like that Jägermeister stuff?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Gothic font.
Yeah, that's really the Gothic. And that's the cool thing about that is that it's hard to read. And so if the reader has to read this font, they will have problems deciphering it, but they will be able to read it in the end. But it kind of conveys the feeling that it's another language.
That's a good idea.
And it's hard to understand.
That's a good idea.
Oh, because you could have when they first meet or something, the guy could be speaking in English, but just the way the American character, whoever it is, reacts to him, you'd be like, "What? What are you saying? I don't know German."
Yeah.
And then it would kind of set the precedent.
Yeah, I like the way you think there.
That's the stuff.
Comics. see? Yeah.
I'm actually thumbing through. I have the color editions of the Akira books from when they like first brought them to the United States, and I don't think it did it much justice. Like Steve Olaf's colors
I
are
thought
fine.
Dark Horse did them in the late 90s. They did them black and white. Wasn't that Dark Horse?
They brought it over in color, and Steve Olaf did the colors, and he's a fine colorist. I just think when you actually see the black and whites next to it, it just wasn't made for the color, so it doesn't hold up as well.
You don't need color in most manga. They're designed to be seen in black and white.
Right. It just like I'm looking at pages I was looking at last night, and Josh says he has the black and white editions, and I'm just like, it's just not as strong, which is odd because you'd think the color would really help it, but I don't know. This was also like right when the computer technology was becoming a thing.
Yeah, and that's bad color.
And
everything was a gradient, a computer Photoshop gradient.
Pretty much. I mean,
everything looks like it's made of chrome.
Yeah, I mean to replace my German Akira edition, which is, I think, a licensed from the American colored version. So it's so weird. They didn't even license the stuff from Japan. They licensed another foreign colored edition. Maybe because it was re-edited to be read from left to right, and I think all the sound words are also retouched.
Yeah. It's also cheaper. It's cheaper to just translate a version that's already been colored than to hire. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because a bigger audience that has not heard of Akira will buy it if it's in color, even if it's worse.
Do we even have a right to left edition of Akira that's been produced?
I don't.
Mine's
left to right. The Dark Horse I have is left.
I don't think they've done a right to left.
In Germany, they have an edition that is like the Japanese thing, 6 volumes.
This is
very thick volumes in black and white and read from right to left, so from back to front.
Oh, awesome.
It's pretty shocking that we still don't. I mean, maybe just because we already have it, so they figure why bother. But as well as manga is integrated into our culture now, it's not like we don't know how to read it.
So here's what blows my mind about this, is that I know I'm not reading it the way he drew it. And you know how when you usually flip a drawing, it just screws the whole thing up because the anatomy's off, and it never gets thrown off. I'm like, he's that good that you flip it and it still looks great. It's like, I never feel like I come across a panel, I'm like, well, that face is janky. But, if you do it to your own work all the time, it feels like it happens, like, man.
Michael, do you not flip it in Photoshop to check to see if it's...
I do sometimes. I should do it more often.
Yeah, I do that on Studio every page now.
I just started recently to do it regularly. It's to make it part of my routine to flip the drawing all the time when I'm drawing. It's super useful.
In Manga Studio, you can set up a custom palette, and you can actually make the rotate flip canvas a button on there. So I just use that button to keep it. And when I first started using it, like every single face I drew, I was like, ugh. But it's starting to get where my faces are like,
oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'd say only about half will work for me. And then I use the liquefy tool to sculpt it back into place.
Yeah.
I find that I'll do it often if I can look at the drawing and I'm like, something's off here, I'll flip it. But a lot of the times I was just kind of trying to keep moving, and if it looked fine, I kept going. But looking at this, like he didn't have Photoshop, but he had a mirror, so that helps. I'm sure.
Hey, question from the live stream chat, guys. Matthew asks, do you ever go to print with a story that you know doesn't work in some ways, but know it needs to be done? I guess that would be more for probably Doug and Kazu.
Oh yeah,
More
this
stories.
Doug, I have definitely.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
a bad habit. Bad habit. Totally bad.
I would tell Doug to stop doing that.
It's totally immoral, and yes, I have.
I held back Amulet 1 for almost a full year past the deadline because it wasn't working. I drew it 3 times prior to the final version of it, and it was garbage. I just didn't. It was something that I wouldn't want to read, and I couldn't figure out what was happening. So I had to go in there and rework it. But doing that gave me a process. You know, I figured out how I could kind of mitigate that over time by breaking the book up into small sequences. So if something breaks, I only get rid of that small sequence. I don't get rid of the whole book anymore. But
how long are your sequences, Kaz?
Rarely over 20 pages.
Okay.
On average, I'd say about a dozen pages. And then I just try to contain whatever I'm trying to say within the framework of the 12 pages, the dozen pages, and essentially tell a short story from beginning, middle to end in that sequence. And then I can actually move that sequence wherever I need it to go in the book, and let's all shuffle it around.
So they're almost like standalone shorts. They're about the same story, but they take place in different locations, right? One sequence is not in the same place the other.
I typically I'll run 2 to 3 story threads, and then I'll think of like each story thread as having maybe 3 to 6 sequences. Yeah. And then I just start working on those sequences, and as I'm putting the book together, I mix and match to see where where things should go. And I noticed that if you're running 2 threads concurrently, you can actually make the book feel bigger and longer than it actually is.
Because it cuts back and forth between 2 stories, and
if you cut back and forth, it'll actually feel longer.
Huh.
I do a similar thing with Spaceboy, because the problem I have every week is that once I publish the episode, it's kind of set in stone. So it kind of gives me this problem of like, how do I create, it's almost like an improv show where I have to create something that looks like it was done with intention, but was really just like done in the moment. But there's a sense I have that like, if it's like laying bricks, like if I know that this brick is good, then if I lay it on this other good brick, I know it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And then the problem is I just have to figure out how to make the next brick lay right. And it's kind of like that, where it builds off of each other. And as long as I make sure that this week's brick is good, I don't have to worry as much about like landing the thing later. But on the other hand, I don't have to fit it all.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's exactly right. Yeah.
When they
it actually reminds me a lot of
on
D&D. Oh, sorry, Michael, go ahead.
It's funny because it's now just sitting all the way down here where it's like, doing webtoons, because I still had a full-time job and I still had to turn in the panels that are required every week. There's a quote that Naoki Urasawa uses at the end of one of his documentaries that says, "A professional is someone with a deadline, and with that deadline does everything he can to deliver a great performance." And I kind of had to repeat that because it was like, I have to get this done, because they're expecting the panels, I have to turn it in. And so I would just do the best I could for that deadline, knowing full well that what was going to happen when I finished it, I would go back through the whole thing and fix things if I had to, or add additional things for the print edition. But so I just never felt set in stone for me. Like I wouldn't print something that I didn't feel like was exactly what I wanted it to be. But when I had a deadline, I was like, I got to get this thing done. They need it for Friday, and we're not on break or whatever the case may be. I'll just do my best. We'll see how it goes.
I'm just a snob. I hate my own stuff. Like, I don't feel like any of it's fit to print. So at some point, I got to get it out there. But I really don't. I feel like I could work on this stuff forever if I was doing what it needed to be. And so I always feel like, well, this is as close as it's going to get. I got to get this out. So, and there's not even an impending deadline. It's more like I got to get on with my life and go tell another story. And so I kind of cut bait on the last story I was working on, and then off it goes. Otherwise, I don't feel like I've ever made anything worth that I would look at again and go, oh yeah, total respect. I look at all my stuff now and go, ugh. I can't wait to get on to my next thing to try and apologize to everyone for my last thing I made. And the drill goes on.
I mean, that's like rough. But I think it's also a huge strength that you have, because I think a lot of artists are like, I can't fail. I have to make something perfect, you know?
Or not making
there's no growth, no
pursuit. And you know, this goes back to, Stephen, some of when I first started on gear, I was just screwing around, right? And I didn't care. And then when I started doing creature tech, I was really studying human form and beauty. And I kept being afraid that I would offend God with a mediocre work. Like, and I read that parable about the hidden talent, who hides his talent from the boss, because he says, like, you're such a taskmaster that I buried my talent in the ground. And he's the guy that gets in trouble. And I just thought, I can't bury this stuff in the ground. It still has to get out. And I really shouldn't be afraid of God. And once I stopped being so afraid of what he might think of my stories, it unleashed me to just start busting stories out. Because now it became more an expression instead of a job I'm doing for someone else who I'm terrified of. You know, it was just a wrong way to look at art. It's like doing art for the wrong reason. It's not.
Yeah, the worst art I've ever made has been out of fear, where I'm like, I want to be successful, and I want to be, especially when when there was a really heavy period in my 20s where I was just like, I have to be a big name, famous somebody, and like this comic's gonna make it for me. Like this comic will bring me into the but that leads to really bad art, I think, a lot of times.
Yeah, well, and it also goes back to, you can't care what other people think of your work to some degree. The audience, like, I love them and I like it when they like my art, but I can't be afraid of them either. You know, I gotta just tell the story.
I'm still working on that one. I'm still kind of afraid of my audience a little bit. I just want to make them happy.
I rarely think of my own work as art.
Yeah.
Do you guys do that? It's hard for me. If I did, I think it would freeze up.
Yeah. Well, I think of it as art if there wasn't so much damn writing involved.
I feel like it's the reader's job to make it art, right? Like they turn it into something that's worth something. So I try to find things that are easier to digest, and I think of I mean, I didn't expect to be teaching so many kids to read.
Yeah. Me too. I get that all the time. Literacy.
It caught me by surprise, but it shouldn't have been a surprise, because that's how I learned to read.
Yeah.
And
well, here's the other thing, Kazu. Hold on.
Yeah.
Isn't teaching kids to read more noble even than telling good stories? Like all the New York Times bestseller and all the income you could make and all the awards you could get.
Oh,
Isn't
yeah.
it more important to teach kids to read with your work?
No, yeah, I think so. I think not just even, you're also help. Like I also I love seeing my neighbors come to my house and their grandparents, and they keep asking me to sign books for their grandkids. I have that happen a lot, and that just tells me that what I had intended to do early on is working, which is to make something that people of all ages, really, like the whole spectrum of ages and different times in their life can come to some kind of a rest point with my books and share an experience. Just hang out and enjoy something together. That's really what I wanted. I wanted to make something for my grandma as much as my 10-year-old self. So.
I walked into our auditorium at church Sunday and turned a corner, and there was like this whole back row of kids reading Adamsville, and I was just like, "What is happening right now?" It was so awesome, and like I guess
instead of the Bible.
Yeah, man. Look, I'm there to keep the young kids in check while the sermon's
Good job.
Yeah.
Good job, Michael.
Hey, man, that's what I do.
Scaring
distracting.
Kids.
Yeah. I don't mind doing that sometimes too. But I think mostly about what would I want to read. So rather than worrying too much about what the audience is thinking, I try to think about what would I want to see happen and would I be happy with. If I just picked it up off the shelf and read it, would I be happy with it? Yeah. That's the book I want to read. Right? Because, I mean, we were hanging out with Mike Mahak over the weekend. Half the conversations were just us going, "Oh, you like that? I hated that. Oh, I hated that. You like that." Yeah. And it's like, I can't, you can't gauge that for forever. So it's just what makes something that you'd be happy with.
Well, my problem with that, I want to just do it just to make me happy. That's true. But there's always the but. I've done books where just nobody read them. And that was just like a year's work down the toilet. It's like it hurts to make those books, but you're right. In the end, you just have to tell the story and do what's right. But man,
I definitely think you think about the audience. I think it's thinking about it though as yourself as an audience member, like not. I don't know, because I know what you mean. Like where there's this point where it's just like, I'm going to do what I want. I don't care what anybody thinks. Yeah. And I don't think that's what it is. I think you are thinking about what other people think about, but I spend a lot of time thinking about what is satisfying.
Yeah.
In the end of the day. But I try not to make it satisfying to a fault, I guess. I don't know. It's a hard thing to answer.
Yeah, if I didn't care about me, if it was just about just pleasing an audience, I'd go make a SpongeBob cartoon or just do a knockoff, a license of Mickey Mouse or something. And obviously, that's not what we're doing because we know there may be money in that, but that's never going to make me feel good. It'll just give me money and some stability. But that is not why I got into comics. So that there does have to be that. I have to show up and come up with something at some point. We have to do our thing.
Right. I think kind of broadly, there's like a thread in our conversation I kind of want to tease out a little bit, which is that like earlier on we were talking about popular art versus classical art in a lot of ways. Yeah. I think when we think like back to the old composers and stuff, like they started out creating popular art, and the reason that they've been canonized as classical is because they were the first people to do it. And so in the modern day, we have a lot of composers who they want to be the first person to do something, so they create something that's kind of nonsensical and nonlinear and modern and not very popular, which we are not interested in. And so we're kind of like, I think we're talking about like creating popular art, but with intention, not just for the sake of like being popular, but like to bring something to someone. Whereas a lot of modern art is very kind of impenetrable and intentionally devoid of meaning and very objective and stuff and inaccessible to a lot of people. We're kind of like, I'm going to make something that a lot of people will want, but I'm going to put some good stuff in it so that it'll, that it'll help them and deliver a message that I care about, something that I'm passionate about. And it's kind of that like those two things in harmony somehow.
So is it kind of essentially a lot of modern art can be narcissistic?
I don't know.
Is that too harsh of a term? Like,
when I was always working next to Benzu over at Nucleus when we were starting all that up, and seeing the gallery scene. And I had no interest in gallery work or any of that thing. It was really interesting to me to watch it because I sort of saw it as it was closer to advertising work that I had been a part of as a freelancer, prior to that.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of those artists that you guys talk about as being fairly obtuse or difficult to understand, or I think that that's intentional, so that because they have to get clients that are very invested in their work. There's like a very small handful of clients with a lot of money who would invest heavily in their work as if they're the only ones who can understand it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's why they make the work that way, because it's made for those people. Whereas work that we're probably doing, the work that I do anyway, I would much rather it just be read in a library, so that we're not printing too many copies of these books. Or I try to make the books small so that I don't spend too much. I'm not forcing the printer or the publisher to spend more on more paper, things like that. It's more of a it's more popular art, I guess. It's made for popular culture in that way. And in my case, for school. So I think it's just determining where your work is going to go in the end. Figuring out what that person at the other end of the communication thread is looking for.
Yeah.
The more you understand where they fit, what they need from you, or what they want from you, and if you can deliver that, I think the more success you find in any field. So
Yeah.
I think that's what those artists are doing. I think they would agree with you to some extent that their work is obtuse.
Yeah.
But they're still marketing themselves to a certain extent.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's a difference of just how many people I want to talk to. I want to be able to talk to. Like I remember doing a comic strip for my college newspaper, and I just loved how like when the newspaper would come out, I would see like my work like rolling around like trash on the ground, and I could like step on it, and like it was everywhere. It was disposable and pleasant, and there was, maybe there's even a little bit of narcissism in that. For sure. I don't think popular artists are free from
trash in the world.
Yeah. But yeah, maybe it's just a matter of how many people you want to talk to.
Where I noticed it being particularly problematic, though, was mostly when I was in school. I haven't experienced a lot of it since graduating, but like you would go into a class that was like, some sort of painting class, and my assumption would be I'm there to learn how to paint, therefore I want to learn the fundamentals so that I could express myself. But people were trying to jump past the ideas of learning the fundamentals straight to expressing themselves.
That was
and
me,
so,
baby. That was me. It was terrible.
Yeah.
I missed out on so much education because I wanted to go skip all the skill and all the color theory, and I just wanted to go straight to my ideas. It's about me.
Yeah.
And man, did I miss out on a good art education because of it.
Yeah, I think that's where I've noticed it being more problematic than anything, because I think all of that stuff has a space, and so it's fine. But you would listen to people explain themselves, and it was just like, what are you doing? Like, you're here with these professors who have all this knowledge, who can teach you stuff, and like a professor would literally say, try this, try working on that, and they would just reject that and they do their own thing. And I just didn't understand why you would do that when the people, even if you disagree with them, try to take what knowledge they have, because they're there. You're paying them to teach you, And so like my favorite professor in college was the one most people disliked, because he was very like, no, like these are the things I'm looking for. I want this stuff, it was stuff like portrait painting, and he was like, I want you to understand these principles by the end of this class.
And he wouldn't let you wear pajamas in class either. So
I don't ever remember that happening.
Well, I guess that started happening more after. He would also get really mad at you if you yawned. He's like,
I just
"Don't do
remember
that."
him. I just remember him not liking my choice of music selection. Whenever I bring music in to listen with the class, he's like, "Oh no, Michael, what did you bring?" But I still learned the most from him because he worked us. You know, it wasn't just a feel good hour. He put us through it a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I was a fine art major, so we all knew we were just 4 years of paradise of the easiest major you could have at school. And we would go to art shows and like make fun of the other artists because we were all modern artists at the time. We were non-objective modern artists, and we would just so make fun of other modern artists because there'd be like an empty box in the middle of a room, and the artist would go, I was going to put a chicken bone in the box, but then I thought, does it really need a chicken bone? Scratching his beard, and you just go, I'm a fraud.
How are we all sitting
video
around?
games? I might as well go into video games, and that's why I went into video games and animation. This fine art stuff's garbage. And I do love fine art, don't get me wrong, but it's so absurd in modern art.
Well, you would look at guys
My
like
question
Picasso
is-
and stuff, though, and that dude was painting like Raphael when he was like 13. Like,
Yeah,
like-
and then it was all downhill from there.
Yeah.
These guys, they would unlearn their skill. They tried
Right.
to paint better. Picasso especially, he was fantastic, and Van Gogh too. But they ended up being about, and they were not snobs. I mean, they really had the best intentions. I think they did something wrong, but they had the best intentions. They were exploring ideas, and I get that. I just think the world is better off when artists just make beauty instead of explore ideas. Just make something. I mean, do I care what the philosophy of Michelangelo is when he carves a man out of 18 feet of marble? I'm like, I don't care. I love the marble, and I love that beauty is. You stand before the David and you'll just cry. And I don't cry before a urinal. This is not a urinal by Duchamp. You know?
God. I hate that
Rory?
guy. So many modern artists I hate.
Can I jump in with a question from the comments?
Do whatever you like.
Yeah, all right.
It's
Nick
your
Welch,
party,
our-
man.
Our amazing moderator. If you guys don't know Nick, check him out. Nick Welch is asking, what point do you decide you're being too precious, quote unquote, with your art and decide to just let it go? And how do you know for sure when it needs more work and you shouldn't? Sorry, did I read that correctly? You can
Try
see it
again.
on my screen. At what point do you decide you're being too precious with your art and decide to just let it go? Let's stick with that.
Like on a particular piece, or I mean, like for me, with like, I don't know if this is the answer you're looking for. Like if I'm working on a page and if a drawing's not just working, I just throw it away and start over. I won't noodle it into the ground.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's.
No, I agree. If
What are you looking for?
If it's going south on me, I got to throw it out and start over. Unless I put it in, just going south and leave it there. There's, comics, because it's a mass medium, I find I have to let more stuff go because I have to get the book done. So it's going to mean the medium itself is not about perfection. It's about 208 pages, and no one page is a standing illustration by itself. It's a story. It's made up of 100 pages is what the art's about.
Right.
That's the difference between comics and illustration. As an illustration, it's like you put everything in that one illustration. You're an illustrator. And although masters like Wrights and Mike Mignola, I really do see their individual pages as complete and total illustrations. But then I'm less interested in their story too, and I don't think they're known for their story as well as their art.
Well, it's funny. I don't even really think
I'm in it for
about.
the story.
Yeah, that's the same. I really don't think about, like, when I'm making my comics, I don't sit here and go, I'm making art. Like, I'm just telling us, like, I got into, like, I learned how to draw because I wanted to tell stories visually. I don't love drawing. I love telling stories, and I draw to do it. So
I often, even when I know that I'm going to scrap the sequence, I'll actually just keep drawing it. It's painful. Like I'll have my spidey sense like just ringing, and saying I gotta get off of this sequence. But I remember something that my friend Kang Lee, painter, did, and it stuck with me for a long time. And I'd watch him do this painting that I thought looked pretty good, but he kept telling me it was terrible. He said, "This is not good. This is not a good painting. It's terrible." But he usually finished paintings in like an hour or 2 hours. It was, he was so fast. But this one, he spent the whole day, and he was on my computer painting this thing, and he spent the entire night painting this thing. And he said he needed to finish it, and then he did. He finished the whole thing, and then he painted another one very quickly, and it was much better. But he said he needed to finish it to see what was wrong with it. And ever since then, I've done that with my comics too, and it's really helped out because a lot of times I will just finish out a terrible sequence, and then I'll take a look at what I had just done, and I'll actually find little bits and pieces from it to use later on. And so I just leave it off to the side, and sometimes the answer is there, but it's not for the question at hand.
Yeah. So do you think of your pencils more as thumbnails? Like your pencils they're on trial still?
Yeah, I mean, these are pages I would ink full sequences and then just scrap them. But my pencils are, I guess they're like thumbnails because they're so small. I draw, my pencil pages. I mean, I don't know if you guys can see on the thing, but they're only, I draw them 2 to a sheet of 8.5 by 11. So yeah, that's my final pencil, and then I will scan that and print it out larger and ink it at a much larger size, like this 9 by 12, and this is my final. Yeah.
That is teeny.
Yeah, I like to noodle detail, so I know my bad habits. I just I try to stop myself from doing that by forcing myself into a smaller box.
Mike, didn't you used to pencil like 4 pages on a piece of paper? You used to pencil tiny.
I used to try to, yeah.
Or you might have even inked tiny like that.
Yeah, I did.
As well. I think back when Mike was working with me on Amulet, I think I was doing 4 to a page.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were small. I stopped doing that after a while. It was just driving me nuts. It was too small.
I was doing.
Hey guys, I gotta jump. God bless you guys. I gotta go get some dinner with my family.
All right, man. Take care.
Hi, Doug.
Thanks for joining us, Doug.
It's shopping time. See you guys.
Yeah,
I figure out how to get out.
Welcome to the Twilight Zone.
I'm so old. Where's the button?
The best is if you're still trying to figure it out while you hit it off, because that's the total. Yeah, I used to pencil smaller, and then when I got the Cintiq Companion, I started bringing that, and then I started penciling in the computer, and I haven't stopped since. It saved me a step of scanning and everything, and especially since I'm trying to get pages done while going to work and having a family, it was just like whatever makes the process more efficient, so that I could keep it rolling. It just wasn't time to do all that stuff. Although I keep feeling tempted to go back and draw pages on actual paper again at some point. Be nice.
Yeah, I can't draw on the Cintiq that much. Just gives me a headache. You guys don't get that?
No, not
Sometimes.
yet.
No? Yeah, it just feels like I'm not completing something. Feels like I'm ice skating.
I get that a little bit.
I went digital early on, and I've had no desire to go back.
Stephen used to print his pages out, and that was how he felt. Right?
Yeah, when I was doing Mal and Chad for the first volume, I was trying it on a Cintiq, and I just felt like I wasn't making any progress. And I went out and bought a printer and printed out like 70 pages, and I was like, oh, this is how much I've been doing. And I think I'm in for a similar shock when Spaceboy comes to print. Because I don't even. It is doing a digital, like doing webtoons is just weird because it's like this giant treadmill and you don't even know how fast you're running. Because it's gonna be like.
Oh, it's shocking.
Yeah.
Like
it's crazy.
I haven't, like, since I don't really print anymore, I don't think about how many pages I'm making. And then I go and look and I'm like, I've got like 5 books here.
Yeah. I've done like 9 or 10 volumes in 3 years, I think, or something like that. It's like, it's crazy. It's crazy. And it's awesome. But it's also crazy. Yeah. So
it's a lot of crazy.
Yeah.
To chime in on the question from the chat, I was thinking about it a little bit the last few minutes. I think what helps me a lot to not go crazy on detail is to break down my process into different steps, and I will allow me to give a certain amount of attention to each step. So, for example, for a panel, I would create a preliminary drawing and would allow me a certain amount of time to do that, or a certain amount of noodling, and when it's done, it's done, and I won't change it. Then I'm making a clean drawing over that, and I will put a certain amount of awareness to the quality of the lines or the shapes and stuff like that. But at a certain point, I call that finished, and I won't change anything. And then in the coloring, it's another phase where you kind of decide how many light sources will I use on this or that character, or what kind of background put I down there. But at that point, all the drawing and stuff is already wrapped up, and you won't change anything in that. So I see that in comparison to painting work, where at any time you could change any aspect of a painted illustration, and you say, okay, I will put more detail into the face of this character or into this tree in the background, and I change the shape of this tree branch and stuff like that. And you can change every aspect of every visual aspect at any time. And instead, in my comic work, I try to make decisions in a certain phase, and then I stick with them. And I won't color something that isn't in the drawing, and I won't go back to the drawing and change it in order to color something different. You know what I mean? So
force limits.
Yeah, exactly. It's thinking in those limits, and I think about it a little bit like you would do an animation. You know, where the roles are actually divided between different people, where you have someone who does the animation, the key frame animation, for example, and then you have the in-betweener, and when you are the one who cleans up the animation, for example, you don't take into question the work of the keyframe animator. You're just doing. You try to polish the work in your domain, and I try to wear these different hats when I'm doing my comic work too. So I trust the drawing me that did the preliminary drawing, and I won't change a lot of that. And when I'm the colorist, I'm just trying to concentrate on the colors.
Smart advice.
I've always wondered with your work, Daniel, because I look at it and I'm like, how does he get this done? How do you get this done? That's as a comic, it's so detailed and crazy. The painting and stuff, man.
Well, I noticed that with every new chapter, I'm getting a little bit more stylized and a little bit less detail, especially in the characters. I'm trying to streamline those, but I'm just super happy with painting detailed backgrounds. I think that's the big thing. I just can't get enough of that. It's just I love to do it, and yeah, I just do the hard work. It's just
yeah, it's gorgeous. Like I can literally point to 2 moments that you and Kazu were involved in where I literally stopped and I just looked at my computer and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like there's a preview image from Amulet with the shot of the Sharnan house, and the very first image you released, Kazu, forever ago. I literally remember sitting at my desk for like 30 minutes going, just like not knowing what to do with myself. But it was, but I think Wormworld Saga and Amulet really showed me like what is possible within the comics medium, because I grew up on, superhero comics where it was sort of everything kind of looked the same. And I know we've had stuff like, the Max, and we've had some American comics and everything. But looking at your work, both of your works, really made me realize, okay, you can do pretty much anything and just tell it in a comics format. And they're so cinematic feeling, and they're both awesome.
Oh,
thanks, Mike.
I don't think there's a bigger compliment than that, because I remember that exact feeling when I saw the Akira manga, and this was also an enlightening moment for me, because up to that point I only knew, comics that were made for a younger audience. Like, well, I read all the Asterix comics, for example, and some other stuff that came from France and Belgium and Tintin and stuff like that. And this was my perspective of comics and what kind of stories could be told with comics. And when I, as a teenager, saw Akira at the bookshelf of a friend, and I actually read Akira every time. I specifically visited this friend to read his Akira books.
Like, hey man, want to play? No, I'm gonna hang out in your library.
Yeah. Well, it was the thing is the guy was smoking weed all the time, and he didn't care if anyone was sitting with him anyway. So I was sitting. By the way, I have the weirdest memory from that thing, because it was really a tradition. So I would come to his home. He would kind of build his Mariana pipe, and I was I was reading Akira. And we did it for quite some time, because he got the books. It wasn't even his own books. He borrowed them from a friend. So every time I would come to him, I would ask, "Have you got a new volume of Akira?" "Yeah, here you go." And he would light up his pipe, and I would be reading Akira. And then many years later, or several years, I would say, I ordered my own volumes of Akira, and because it was quite expensive, I ordered them like, I don't know, 3 books a time or whatever. So when the first batch of Akira books arrived at my home, and it was several years from when I read them at my friend, I opened up the first book.
You smelled weed.
Through it. I smelled weed. Exactly. It was exactly that. I couldn't believe it. It was a real olfactoric. How would you call it? My English vocabulary is failing me.
Olfactory or
hallucination. That's the word I was looking for. And it was real, and it went for several volumes, and then it slowly faded away. But it was so much connected to these circumstances in my head that it was really phenomenal. But yeah, but what I actually wanted to stress is that you have to see stuff done, and you do not even have to know how it's done. You just need to see that it's possible to do.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's that's also my philosophy. If someone if I maybe show someone like someone asked me, how can you show me how you use Photoshop or stuff like that? And there are two things that you could do. The one thing is you could go into every little detail and try to explain them exactly what to do. Or what I like to do much better is give him a quick overview, show him that everything is possible, and so that they know what they can search for when they want to do a specific thing, but they know that it is there somewhere. And that's super important, I think, because you have to have a glimpse on something that you cannot explain for yourself, and then you have to. I mean, you can only learn things by exploring them yourself. So it's much more important to see stuff that you don't know how it works, than to get it explained in every tiny little detail, because that will keep you from exploring it for yourself.
Good, I like that. Jason, did you just like put together this hangout so you could just kind of listen to a podcast of all the cartoonists that you're at?
Pretty much, yeah. I miss having certain podcasts to listen to, so I think just assemble the team of people I want to listen to.
All right, you guys talk. I'll chime in once in a while.
Just like, I gotta give him a new topic. Here, guys, talk about this. I want to. These questions from the audience.
That's pretty.
I have another question from the audience. How would you fix this color right here?
Yeah. Here's a question from the chat. So the panel that Jason is currently painting, I'm asking for a friend. It's.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
You know, it's another great comic that was for all ages, kind of before a lot of this started blowing up, that I don't see people talking a lot about, but it's great, is Akiko. Any of y'all read that?
Akiko.
Never.
I've
Mark Curley. It's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
good stuff.
He's doing a lot of how to draw manga books or something. I believe doing like instructional books.
I saw they moved a lot of them into look like chapter books as well, but I haven't really seen him do any more graphic novels, but a lot of them are great. Like, yeah, I think mine are starting to fall apart.
I've only ever found the novel or the kids novel ones. I've never found the comics, but yeah, he has a huge YouTube channel, right?
Oh, he does.
He teaches people. What's his name again?
Mark Curley?
Yeah. He's got a huge YouTube channel.
Well, next time you're in Jacksonville, you can read mine, Steven.
Yay!
And pull them on.
I just come all the way over here just to read your comics.
Just come over here and read some comics. Sounds like a pretty nice night, actually. Read comics.
Just gotta get somebody over to smoke weed. In the background.
No, actually, we don't need that.
It's funny hearing about Mark's career now. I was at, I think, Emerald City last year, and I get this question a lot now. I'm asked by people in the comics industry why I quit. Quit comics.
What?
Yeah, because they don't know that Amulet exists. So they thought that I retired after I did Flight and Copper and Daisy Cutter, and asked me like, when am I coming back? And
that just kind of tells me how.
I don't get mad or anything. I just explain to them what I've been doing, and they get excited about that. But it just goes to show how separate the comics industry is from other mainstream industries like publishing. They're not even looking at a lot of what's going on in these other places. Changing now that a lot of those artists do have kids now, so now it's coming back into periphery where they're like saying, "Oh, my kids are reading your book, and I remember you, and this is so we're reconnecting in that way." But I always find it interesting every time I go to these comic shows, and I don't draw a big crowd at a Comic-Con, these days. And I think organizers are surprised, and I tell them, like, I'm actually not in comics.
Huh.
Weird. Publishing, I guess. Regular publishing.
Yeah, I sometimes get a feeling that the comics industry is so like super segmented, and I feel like some people who live in the superhero comics part of the industry, or at least as consumers, like aren't even aware of what's happened, with manga, and then people who are in manga aren't aware of what's on the American side, and then like there's children versus adult comics, and especially children's comics, because everyone thinks comics are for kids, but most of them are not, and then there's just all of these like barriers, I guess, which is kind of weird, and then webtoons, this new platform from Korea. I'm like, guys, this is a huge deal. Like this could be a big thing, but that's super segmented too. Like the audience I have on that platform, they don't hardly like they're people who use phones is kind of them, and so it's a real. I mean, I guess you could look at it in terms of opportunity. I mean, it means you can like bring your comics to different segments, but like, it does kind of feel surreal how separate it all is.
Can I just
in
say,
a way, it's exciting.
I'm so thankful that bookstores have finally brought back the kids' comic section. Because
really?
it was impossible to find comics in the kids section.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah.
It's just all spread throughout it, and I was like, I appreciate the sentiment that it's just normal literature, but I would like to be able to find it in a more accessible way. But I do appreciate the sentiment, though.
I didn't appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate that. Classifying it as just worthy to be with everything else. I mean, it's weird. You go to schools now. I used to get in trouble if I had a book in class. And now teachers are like, we need more comics because the only thing the kids will read are comics. And so, but before, like, it get confiscated and I get in trouble if I had a comic in class. So it's exciting that they've stopped classifying it as something bad and considered it just another medium for kids to read. There's still occasionally teachers who don't like it, but
apparently our whole county hates books, so.
But nowhere near as much as it used to be.
Yeah, I think it's more a reflection of the content, though, because I think with a lot of superhero comics, there were things that the parents didn't want, to have to talk about immediately, or all the way back to the Comics Code Authority and stuff. I just feel like that was a whole lot of miscommunication, from on everybody's part, because all throughout, you had comics like Pogo still coming out and being popular. During the time when Tales from the Crypt or Vault of Horror and all that stuff is getting confiscated, or having that aggressive pushback against it. I think it had less to do with comics and more to do with these conflicting cultural dynamics. And right now, a lot of the comics that are being done for kids don't reflect. They're not counterculture comics. They're generally just educational. Like, people just want to have something that's that doesn't make waves, so to speak. And just generally entertaining the masses. And so I think that there's just that general acceptance has changed because of the content. However, there isn't that much of that stuff. So the very few books that are there tend to be the only ones you see these days.
Right. It's true.
No.
I mean, to be fair to your point, I was bringing stuff like Batman and Death in the Family to school. So, like, Joker's full on killing Robin with a crowbar. So, it was a little.
Yeah. I was drawing Lobo.
Yeah. Oh gosh, like my 5th grade sketchbook is just full of like my version of Mortal Kombat characters doing fatalities. There's a couple parent conferences.
Yeah, you got FBI called.
Yeah, like my dad still tells me the stories. Like, I remember having to go up to the school because your teacher called and she was like, he keeps drawing sharks getting their heads cut off. What's going on with your son? Like, well, he's a little obsessed with Jaws. That's one. But yeah, when Mortal Kombat came out, man, that was like the panic attack happened. Remember, like, you found out the cheat code to unlock blood in the Sega Genesis, and you were like, what? Don't let mom know. Actually, bought the SNES Classic yesterday. I'm pretty excited to play that. Some of the games on there.
Nice. Yeah, I'm playing Street Fighter with my kids.
Nice. On the SNES Classic?
Yeah, the little little guy. Yeah.
So Shepard found Shepard's my youngest. He's 3, and he first thing he comes in this morning, he's holding it, and he's like, "Daddy, where'd you get this box?" he's like, is it mine? I'm like, well, you can play it. And then he spent like 2 hours trying to play Super Metroid, and he was, a lot of it was kind of way over his head, trying to figure out how to unlock doors and stuff.
Over my head half the time. I get lost so easy in that game.
He was having fun with it though.
We've been playing. Go ahead. My friend brought his one over, and we've been. There's a game called, is it like Secret of Mana or something?
Yeah,
that's an old school. We've been playing through that one. I never had video games as a kid.
Josh and I were trying to play Contra 3.
That's the hardest game in the world.
Yeah, Contra 3 is. Although I watched the speed run of it in like 15 minutes, so that guy had it down. You were talking about how short it was. It's only 6 stages long.
Yeah, it's super short game. It's just hard.
Just look at the kids, and you're like, you do the whole Bane speech from The Dark Knight Rises. You don't know what hard is like. I was born in it. Yeah, it's fun.
I had a super weird experience with computer games once. I remember that I was playing GoldenEye 007 on N64. It was a James Bond ego shooter.
Oh, yeah.
College parties for days, huh?
But the thing is, it was the good old days when you had to achieve your cheat codes, especially on console games, of course. There was no other way to unlock the cheat codes, but making the challenges that they posed you. And I remember that there was one challenge for the all weapons cheat code, which was super hard. It was a very complicated level. You had to finish it in 1 minute and 30 seconds on the hardest difficulty level, and 29 seconds of the time was a cutscene at the end of the level.
Oh, jeez.
So you had basically a minute. You couldn't catch a single bullet from anyone, and you always had to make headshots, unless you wouldn't be able to do it in time to the end of the level. And I remember training this level, even with some weapon sheets, so that I had more powerful weapons that I would actually be able to use when I would actually try to make the challenge. And I was always half a minute too slow. and 95% of the time I was dying trying. So, and I concluded that it would never be possible to beat that level and to unlock this cheat code. But then one day I came from school.
So intense.
I came from
It happened.
Really. And this was really... I came from school and I knew it was the day. I fired up the N64. I started the challenge with the normal weapons and with the hardest difficulty level and everything. And I rushed through this level like in a dream. And I even had 10 seconds left in the end. And I don't know what happened at this day. I have no idea what happened. It was like, I don't know. It was like,
I got a story similar.
It was pure inspiration. And from that day on, I know that it would probably be worthwhile to work on your working conditions and try to figure a way out to bring you in the right mindset to achieve really great stuff. You know what I mean? Because I know that in most of the time when I'm working, I'm in a pretty common, normal, everyday life mindset, and I just do my work. And maybe I do some distractions. I'm listening to a podcast or to music or whatever, and I'm just having an average day. And sometimes I'm wondering what it would be if you would really try to make every day a power super day, like that day back then. I know that it exists. You know, it's the same topic. I know that it exists, that it can happen. I just don't know how you do it.
There's a book I love. It's called Deep Work.
Oh,
yeah.
Have you read that?
Yeah, I have read that. Because I saw it. I saw Jason talking about it.
Yeah, man. I think that there's a little piece of that in there because I could see like you practicing that level for weeks, and then just like in your subconscious overnight, like your brain just putting all the little pieces together, and then you coming home and going, oh. But I think, and for me too, like there's we just don't like to be in a painful situation ever. So we try to make our work environments as easy as possible, but kind of being willing to lift the bar for yourself to like really struggle mentally. Like later on, you'll see, you can see those kind of things come out. I think it's possible. I mean, I think there's a similar thing that could happen, but.
Even his book basically is like, it's good if you can get 2 to 3 hours of good deep work in. He's like, that's extremely difficult. Pulling it further than that is difficult. What was your Stephen? I'm sorry, I was going to ask Jason what he was saying.
I finished.
Okay.
Yeah, that's really cool.
My story.
Yeah.
Well, it's definitely not the whole reason, because it's not because I practiced. My story is like I don't know what age I was. I was probably
I found the cheat codes.
In grade. I was in probably junior high, somewhere in junior high, and the local game shop where you could rent Nintendo games had a competition for this game that was similar to like Duck Hunt, where you have the little gun. And I had never heard of this game, and I went and entered it because I wanted to win a game, but I was really shy and super nerdy and not really very confident to do anything in public. So I stood in the back and just waited, and everyone played through and got as far as they could. And there was these like little cocky kids that were just like, yeah, no one's gonna beat me, I'm so good, And finally it was my turn. I was the last one. And
I like how all those kids are like, they have Midwestern accents. No one's gonna beat me, yay!
That's right. And so I was the last one, and I never played this game before. I still don't even know what this game is called. And I started playing it, and I didn't miss anything. And I kept going, and finally and slowly, everyone just started fading away, and everyone left. And I kept playing, and the lady was like watching, going, "How long do you want to keep going?" And I just kept hitting everything. And I was like, I guess I'll quit, because I wasn't missing anything. And so I won the game.
Nice.
It was weird though, because my right eye was blurry the whole rest of the day.
You sacrificed a part of your soul to win that.
Yeah, it was strange.
So weird.
But I keep thinking I need to get this game and get one of those old Nintendo guns and actually play it and see how difficult it was, or was it some miraculous thing that was happening? My brain was just intuned somehow that day. I don't know. Or was it just really easy and everyone else sucked? I don't know. It was weird. That's my story.
Good one. I like it.
We just finished the Shadow of the Colossus remake, and the kids just like love watching it because it's just so epic. And now I'm looking at it going, do I want to go back to this and things? And that's like a game where when you beat it and you go back to it, you get a bunch of, you unlock a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm not really a completionist in that way. I'm like, all right, I did it. On to the next thing. Someone else wants to deal with that, they can.
I usually get halfway through. Anytime I beat a game and then I want to go back through and like I'm at 100% it now, I usually get about halfway through and then I get bored and I'm done.
Mm-hmm. That game was giving Shepard nightmares, man. He came running into our room the other night. He's like, "Monsters coming!" But he would literally hand the controller to my middle child. He's like, "It's scary." He just leave the room. He always wants to try, and obviously he's 3, so the mechanic, the motor skills involved don't quite do what they need to do to scale that thing. But it's fun watching him get into it. I just love how many awe-inspiring moments happen in that game. I don't know if all of you played it or seen it, but man, some of them it's just whew, good stuff.
Yes, the giant stonekeepers at the end of at the end of Amulet 2. That whole sequence is inspired by Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah, I think I remember you saying how big of an influence that was.
Yeah, it was. It had an impact on me too. I hadn't felt that way about a game since Super Mario 64. I think that was another one that felt similar. It felt like art.
Especially the ending of it is what I mean. It's an amazing game to play, but then when you see the ending, you're like, wow.
You experience the ending. It's not just see the ending. It's it's experiencing the lack of control that you have at the end.
Yep. It's such a jaw-dropping moment story-wise. And I was actually listening to I found a video on YouTube where a guy goes through the game, and the whole idea was the morality of Shadow of the Colossus. And obviously I don't want to dive too much into it because I'm sure there are people who haven't played it and don't want to ruin the ending, but there's some really just cool story stuff going on there is the best way to put it. And things that you think don't matter, like why is the environment desolate? And then you kind of see why, and you're like, oh, makes total sense and is awesome. The remake is awesome. You have the PS4, don't you, Kazu?
Mm-hmm.
It's worth picking up if you haven't gotten it.
I'll definitely get it. I still do play games. I just get on Destiny just to move my brain and go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a gym. Getting a membership.
That's sort of what Hearthstone is for me. I talk to Jason a lot on there actually about it. But it's another one where, especially if I'm up late working, I start to get tired. I'll play a quick match, and that just fires my brain back up to thinking again and just working out problem solving and stuff.
Right.
And the matches are quick, so I'm able to get in and get out.
Yeah, I do this. I always think of my grandpa playing the Sega Saturn right up until he passed away. He was in the early 90s. My grandma would just sit him in front of the TV, turn on the Sega Saturn, and he'd play Mahjong.
Nice.
And she did that just to keep his brain going. And it was helping him fight off dementia and things like that. So so I think of that a lot. I go, I don't have time for games, so but I make time just for the mental workout.
Mm-hmm. At least there's something that makes Colossus accessible on that point is it is sort of a game you can kill a Colossus and put it down. All right, that's that one for today. Although some of those puzzles in that game are hard, if you don't have any assistance with it, trying to figure it out.
Did anyone play Inside from Playdead?
Yes.
That was so good.
It is so good. Very
Inside?
good. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. That's one of the best games I played in years.
It's short too. It's 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 maybe 2 to 3 hours long, something like that, man. Somewhere around there. But made by the same people who made Limbo.
Yeah.
Really cool puzzle game. What's that, Steven?
Is it like a locked room game, or I've never heard of it?
Do you want to talk about it, Dana?
Yeah, it's I don't know. Do you know Limbo?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a side scroller game.
You had me at
Especially
side
Inside
scrolling.
has a lot of vibes from Another World, which was a classic on the Amiga and the Super NES, I think. It's just you just walk from left to right, and you have a lot of puzzles to solve. But in the case of Inside, what I think the most impressive in it is the world design and the atmosphere. And I mean, the ending is just the most weirdest thing that you have ever experienced in any computer game. And you can't really talk about it because it's just so awesome. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's cool.
It's really good. It's definitely worth picking up if you have a system that has it.
What does it come on?
Cool.
What systems would it be for?
You talking about
I
Inside?
think it's on all the major ones. Yeah.
Yeah, it's on Xbox One and PlayStation, and I guess
I've got it on Steam.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on Steam. It's really cool. And yeah, it's a side scroller, but it's also sort of a puzzle game where you're deciphering things as you're going. But yeah, when the ending happened, I was literally like, I'm sitting on the couch like I have no idea what's happening, but this is awesome. It was.
Did you ever play Little Nightmares, Mike?
No, I haven't
That's
yet.
such a good game.
I keep waiting for it to go on sale or something.
I think I have it physical. I can let you borrow it if I can find it. That's a great game.
For the PS4 on there?
Yeah. Wait, I think so.
Yeah. Then we'll trade. You'll get Shadow of the Colossus, and I'll borrow that one.
That works.
Shadow of the Colossus is PlayStation only, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Ah, crap.
I still need to finish The Last Guardian. I've not. It's good, but not quite as good as the last one, as Shadow of the Colossus was. A lot of it, I think, is the mechanics of controlling the dog character. It get wonky at times, but
it has a lot of. I saw a complete let's play of The Last Guardian. It definitely has its moments. It's a cool game.
I need to finish it. It's another one where I've liked trying to find games lately that my kids can sit around and watch or play together, and rather than it sort of being this experience that I wait until I go to bed or something and play, which can be tough. And my wife is like, I bet the kids are like watching Uncharted. I was like, we're not letting them watch Uncharted. There's like 5. Uncharted's awesome, but there's a lot of language and violence.
My 4-year-old has discovered the Art of Mike Mignola art book in my bookshelf. And he has already flipped through it several times, and he's always... I can really feel how this will be something that he will remember when he's older. Because he always says, oh, look, this is a skull. And there's another skull. Why is there a skull? And I try to not explain anything to him. I just want him to experience it. And I remember that when I was little, and I was I don't know, I had to spend several weeks at my great aunt. My I don't know, my mother was in hospital or something like that, and I was at my grand aunt, and I was in a room, and above my bed where I slept, there were Egon Schiele drawings on the wall. And Egon Schiele has this really dark, creepy, skinny, bony people. And I remember that these drawings they stuck in my head. I was very young, like, I don't know, elementary school age or something like that, and I remember that these drawings were creepy and fascinating at the same time.
Isn't it weird how we have those experiences, especially as parents, where I think a lot of the experiences that mattered to me most as a child were things that I was way too young to be a part of.
Yeah.
So like my, seeing Aliens when I think they came out in '87, something like that. It was only like 5. Yeah, it was a little kid, but that movie was, everything to us. Like when we had sleepovers, like we were watching Aliens,
Yeah.
Even when I do my school visits, the very first thing I talk about is Jaws, and I'm always surprised that like the entire group of kids have seen it, and it's weird because like as a parent, you're like, I don't want to put them in front of stuff that is potentially traumatizing, but also like those are all the things that you grew up loving, So it's strange how that works. Although we're going to let our oldest watch Jaws this year. She keeps asking, and it's sort of like our ironic 4th of July movie. So we usually will put it on after we come home from all that and just watch it. And she was like, can I watch it? And I was like, all right, this year you can stay up and watch it. So
you let her watch like Jurassic World.
Like, man,
Jaws is a teacup ride at Disney World.
I'm aware. But for whatever reason, Viviani she's like, I want to let her wait a little bit. And I'm like, all right, it's fine. But yeah, I agree with you. I'm like, Jurassic World's pretty intense.
Yes, childhood Michael, I was very much more sheltered.
I'm still amazed that when you and Josh saw Jaws,
the movie I watched
first time
was,
Wait, what?
I was saying I'm just amazed that the first time y'all ever watched Jaws was when you were hanging out together.
No, I had seen Jaws before that.
Oh, you had?
Steven, I don't think I'd ever seen it.
We watched Jaws together?
I guess we did. I bought it on Blu-ray when I was in Houston, so that would make sense when it came out. But, I mean, I hadn't seen it in years, but...
Wait, did you say we watched Jaws together?
I think we did.
Oh.
I remember you all watching it together.
Yeah, that sounds right. I wouldn't have remembered that, but having you said it, I think that's true.
I was the kid that all the parents in the neighborhood dreaded letting them stay at our house because my mom was just like, whatever. You can watch whatever as long as you didn't start hurting people or whatever.
Yeah, I'd go visit my cousins, and they were able to watch like the most terrifying movies and fall asleep to them. Too scary.
I wasn't allowed to watch Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I still don't really know why. That wasn't
the cartoon or the movies.
Any of it. But then like there was like one day that like I was probably bugging my mom or something. Like she had company over and I was in the living room and she was like, go in the other room and watch Ninja Turtles. And I was like, what? It's like I just turned it on. Like I didn't even really like it, but I was like, I have to watch it because I've been told to watch it. What do I do with this?
Yeah, like we didn't watch TV when I was a kid, but somehow I knew about Ninja Turtles and I loved them. Somehow I knew. I knew they were what I loved.
I remember seeing them in the toy store before the cartoon had been a thing, and just seeing the toys, and I was like, I need every one of those. I don't know what that is, and then the cartoon came out shortly after, or around the same time. But
talking about toys, I totally recommend this show on Netflix, the toys that made us.
I'm seeing that one. I keep thinking about it.
It's about famous toys and how they came to being. I think the first episode is the Star Wars toys, and
it's a series. I thought it was just like one documentary.
No, it's a series. It has like four episodes right now. It's Star Wars, Barbie, He-Man, and G.I. Joe. And I watched every episode save the G.I. Joe one because here in Germany, G.I. Joe is not a thing. It never really existed. But He-Man was big here in Germany, and the Star Wars toys, of course. And they have the people they are interviewing, all those Hasbro people and Mattel people. These are awesome people, very funny, very nerdy, and also the guys from Mattel who were responsible for Barbie and stuff. But the coolest episode is the Masters of the Universe episode, where they all knew that they were doing totally crazy stuff with Masters of the Universe. They basically had a universe where they could do anything, where they could and the weirdest concepts they could make it. It's really, really, really funny to watch. Can really recommend it.
Daniel, are you in Germany right now, or?
I am.
Okay, I'm familiar with your work, but I actually don't know much about you. I'm just so my name's Steven. I'm in New Mexico right now.
New Mexico.
And yeah, are you? So have you ever lived? Do you work for like American companies, or have you lived in America, or do you? What's your bio? I guess.
No, I have never left Germany. Well, except for vacation. But I've actually never been outside of Europe until now. So.
Oh wow.
I was working for local computer game companies many years before I started the comic thing in my free time. And actually now, since the Wormworld books were picked up by Lionforge, it's going to be the first time my stuff is done with an American partner, so to say.
Oh yeah.
It's going to be very interesting.
Did you run a Kickstarter for the Wormwood Saga at the beginning to get that off the ground?
Yeah.
I mean,
it annoyed me. It annoyed me. I was pretty soon after I published on the internet, I was approached by German publishers, and they also managed to license the series to France and later Italy. But it always annoyed me that we weren't able to get deal with an American publisher, because my website statistics clearly indicated that those was the biggest group of people reading my stuff on the internet.
Yeah,
and at some point, I just thought, okay, if no publisher is going to pick up the series, I will just print the books on myself with the help of my publisher. Actually, they helped me with producing the books and provided me the layout.
Did you have to ship internationally to the U.S. to meet that audience? Because like all of my international orders, they had to pay for the Kickstarter I ran, they had to pay a good chunk to get their book across the ocean.
I love that you're taking it that way, because I always love to brag about the German post service.
Oh yeah.
From Germany, you can send a book anywhere to anywhere in the world for €7.
Wow.
What?
Wow.
That's no problem. And it can weigh up to 1 kilogram.
That's super nuts.
We all need to send our books to Daniel, and then he'll distribute them for us.
Just have them printed in German.
No. Seriously. I realized that this is something very unique about Germany, and it's only in Germany. It's not in other European countries. But the German post office post service has some, some legislation to abide to, where they have to offer services for sending stuff out into the world. I don't know. I once was visited by a guy from the post service because they wanted to know what I was doing, because out of the blue I would order like €10,000 worth of postages, and they just wanted what I was doing, and I explained them about the crowdfunding, and they said, "Oh yes, this makes sense." And he explained to me that they are not able to make it more expensive because they have to abide to some obscure law. And they told me that actually it's a thing that companies from China would send containers full of stuff that then gets sent from Germany out into the world.
Wow.
Because as long as you stay below 1 kilogram, the package can have any format. It's not even restricted to a flat format or something. You can basically ship it as a letter, as an oversized letter, and that is €7 from here. And so I had absolutely no problem with sending my books to America. Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm sorry, I gotta head out. I go eat some dinner.
Sounds good.
All right, man.
Thanks for joining.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mike.
Nice to see you all.
See you
Have
next
to do
time.
it again. Yeah, let's do it again. Y'all have a good night.
Later.
All right. We'll see you.
Bye, guys.
Okay, Daniel, I had another question about. I'm curious about what the comics industry is like in Germany, because I see how it kind of works in France, and I'm a bit jealous to a certain extent, because it seems like there's a lot of they subsidize a lot of the printing, and like they send their artists to really nice schools and things like that, and it's sort of a lot different, a lot more different than the rat race here in America. So I'm curious what it's like in Germany, if they have similar kind of programs for artists, or what it's like.
Yeah, I would say the German comics industry is basically not existing.
Oh, really?
So what you find on the German comic market is mainly stuff that is licensed from America or from Japan. This is there's one publisher who is specialized in distributing all the Marvel and DC comics here in Germany, and then there's several manga publishers who kind of share the market for the German manga translations, and there's nearly nothing originally from Germany. There's a lot of stuff going on the internet with independent artists and on our small comic conventions. There's always an artist alley, and you always find the same people there. But we don't have a lot of conventions in the first place. So actually, it just started 2 years ago that the comic convention concept was adapted here in Germany. We now have like 3 Comic-Con events, so pop culture, movie, and comic events in bigger cities. But up to that point, it was just like 3 events a year or something like that. And so there's really no industry in Germany where you could try to make a career out of it and say, I want to be a comic artist and I want to make comics for the German industry. The only guys that kind of make it are those with the one-panel cartoons that are easy shareable on Facebook, and which can be formatted in these gift books. There are a few people that can make a living out of that model. One of them is actually touring with live shows.
I see.
But that's basically it.
Touring with live shows for their comic?
Yeah. It's for their cartoons. I don't know. I have never attended one of the shows, but he somehow managed to make a live show out of his cartooning. It involves projecting his cartoons on a large screen, and I think he also makes a little bit of music. So I guess it's just like, I don't know. Maybe I should attend one of those of those shows just to see how it works. But I know that it won't work for my type of work. So dramatic, long form stories is something that isn't done in Germany, and there is no market for that actually.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How is the just regular like book market? Is it similar, or is that different?
Well, I think the regular book market it's definitely bigger. There are German authors that sell a lot of books. I think it's comparable to other countries, but of course we also have a lot of licensed stuff from other countries. So everyone here knows the Dan Browns and the Stephen Kings, obviously, and whatever. No, when I started to imagine a professional future for my comic hobby, so to say, I wasn't thinking about books or book market or the German book market at all. I was completely only thinking about the internet and what could be done on the internet.
Yeah.
It kind of explains like the approach to like your format with that like endless scroll.
Yeah, exactly.
Kinda
And I even was at the point. I started at a point where it was pretty obvious that advertisement would also not be a big thing for me, because advertising for comics was shrinking, even for the big ones at that point. And I realized that my form of publishing with my long, up to now, I have only published chapters, complete chapters, and I knew that with that updating schedule, I would never be able to make an advertisement model work. So I even I also never planned to have ads on my website, which was another important aspect for the infinite canvas scrolling thing, because I realized that no one was doing that because of the advertisement, and because every page turn that you would create on your website would be a new page impression, which is a measuring stick for advertisement. So from that point of view, my long scrolling pages made absolutely no sense, and only because I never thought about making advertisement money on my website, I was free to experiment with that. And I think that it gave me a big push in the beginning, because it was not very common to see this format. I think that it's very ironic that the infinite canvas format. Oh, cool! That's an American police siren.
Yeah, sorry guys.
I only know that from TV. Kojak.
Yeah. I don't live in the best town in the world, but
yeah. No, but what I wanted to say is I think it's very interesting that the vertical scrolling format is now so popular because of platforms like Webtoons.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's become the thing now.
And it's a little bit I'm since the beginning of the year, I am also publishing a Webtoons edition of the Wormworld Saga.
Ooh,
on the Discover program. And unfortunately, although my comic is vertical scrolling, it is a little bit too wide to just put it on Webtoons. So I actually have to reformat the vertical scrolling version to make it even more narrow to work on Webtoons.
Yeah, that's the speech bubbles are really tricky for some people adapting it too, because most of the comics are read on mobile devices. So
yeah, so you have to
have the speech bubbles be the right size. Yeah,
exactly.
That's really interesting, because you were sort of ahead of the curve a little bit as far as where things went, and. Yeah, it's weird how advertising really affected those sites. I'm really curious to see what's going to happen, because I don't think the question of like where webcomics is going to end up has been decided yet, and it's still evolving a little bit. And I think, like, I know that there's artists in South Korea who make silly amounts of income with just their webcomics. But here in America, a lot of us have one foot in the print industry, one foot in digital. There still hasn't been a lot of people who are like, okay, I'm just digital. I'm just going to be accessed online. ready to make that jump, but we'll see.
Yeah, and it's because it's not such an easy thing. For me, publishing was also a huge factor in creating the content that already exists. But this was not because you could easily sell my work in Germany and make a lot of money from it. It was basically only because the owner of the publishing house that picked me up was super enthusiastic about my work and paid me insane advances. I think that he knew that he would never recoup these advances, but it basically enabled me to create more content.
Yeah.
And but like it often happens, this source kind of dried up for me when this CEO left the publishing house, and the new CEO was not a particular fan of my work. Well, I think he was neutral, but he just looked at the numbers and realized that they would have to pay me much less than they used to pay me from the pure financial standpoint.
Yeah.
And well, but to some extent, I'm actually happy that I kind of need to reinvent myself a little bit right now, because I was kind of, I don't know how to say it. I was kind of cozy in this position and relied on it too much maybe, and didn't do stuff that I could have done in that time. And now it's, well, the best opportunity to move is when you are under pressure, I think. And and I'm going this year. I'm going to try a lot of stuff. So I started with the Webtoons thing, although this is just basically just a small experiment to see what this platform can do for the project. It's fun to watch the statistics and see what's happening and what mechanisms are in place. I realized.
Have you already started publishing on Webtoons?
What was that?
Oh, sorry. Have you already started publishing on Webtoons yet?
Yeah. I started in January.
Oh, okay. I gotta check that out. I'm really surprised that the staff hasn't like featured you or something.
Yeah, I don't know what the policy is on featuring stuff. What I saw is that what I'm currently trying to figure out what the exact mechanisms are. So what I saw was that when the first 5 episodes, my reader rating was a 10. With every new episode, I must have been featured in some row where more people saw it, and every new episode brought in a considerable amount of new subscribers. But as soon as the rating dropped to 9.5, I think this source of new subscribers kind of dried up, and now I'm basically living from the occasional person that finds it when he actively searches in the categories, I think. And I'm wondering if there are any thresholds that you can reach. You know, like when on YouTube you break through the first 1,000 subscribers, you appear on different feature lists and stuff like that. I have no idea if something like that is in place at Webtoons.
It's all kind of arbitrary. I think there's like someone on the staff who just picks week to week. But I think at this point it's gotten so that there's so many comics. There's so many comics on the website. People actually finding your work, in the pile. It makes it a little hard. But I think once it starts picking up, it could be really huge. I'm just really surprised no one's no one from the staff has seen it. I think I'll I'm just kind of making plans to try to, but I think I'll send my editor at Webtoons just a quick hey, did you know this comic is on here now? Because I think once people see it,
that of course would be awesome. I'm trying. I'm trying to make heads and tails of that for myself. I'm actually pondering if it's in their interest to feature or to point their readers at stuff that is like cross-posted, or if they think that this is not something that makes sense for them to feature or to make big. I don't know. Although I must say that I'm really handling this as a second edition because it's really a completely new layout for me. Yeah. And I'm trying to take advantage of this relayouting by giving it a different shape, much like Jason does it with Sithra on Webtoons. I noticed that he also experimented with a very vertical layout a lot and did some very interesting stuff there that you would not see in the book like this. Just yesterday, I stumbled upon an episode where Jason did those super diagonal panels that with diagonal panel lines.
Guys, I gotta head out. Just I'm gonna cut in real quick. I'm sorry, Daniel, but I gotta go.
Thanks for hanging out.
All right, man.
I gotta go pick my son soon. Okay.
All right.
All
See
right.
ya.
See you
Yes.
next time. Yeah. Well, yeah. Let's see. I have structured my content so that I have updates for roughly a year. So I have episodes for a year, and I will just go through that in any case and just watch what happens. With that.
Well, I don't know. I think there's certain momentum to it, and once people start finding it, there could be a real spike. But I can't tell. It always is evolving. Everything's evolving on the platform. So.
Bigger thing that I'm actually planning is to start publishing on a more regular basis on my own website. So I will let go of the publishing only chapter by chapter system to publishing you can't actually call it pages, but I will kind of use the page separation that I'm always having in the background. I will use that to release new content more regularly, like bi-weekly or something like that on the website. This will be the bigger project for me this year. And I want to see what happens then, because up until now I had maximum 2 updates on the website every year, which really is not good to keep you on the radar of the people.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious to see what I can do when I'm actually able to update people every 2 weeks or maybe every week at some point.
I think that could be a really big deal because there's a huge draw just for your art. So I think that you could publish that, and then every time you publish, you could put something on Twitter and all the social media that would say, "Hey, I did this," and with just the image alone would draw a lot of people in, because your backlog's really strong. So if they haven't ever seen it before, they could try it out and then go into the backlog to read more.
Yeah, that's actually the thing that I right at the moment I feel comfortable pointing people at my website, because there's actually stuff for them to discover there. Because with the now 9 chapters, it's really several hours of entertainment, and I feel that it has this critical mass to draw people in if they discover it.
Yeah.
And I don't think that in earlier years I would have felt so comfortable about it. But right now, I think the story has evolved to a point where someone who discovers it and reads it will see the potential of the story, because all the elements are basically there. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's really.
Yeah, you kind of have a bunch of content to draw people in, and then they'll be easier to they'll be more willing to take a little bit at a time now, I think.
And I'm also curious to see what comes out of the American book release. Although I try to not get my hopes up too much. Basically, it will not have the book deal alone will not have a big effect on me and my project, because I'm still on recouping my advance payments from the publisher, and basically the money from the American book deal goes to my German publisher first, and I won't see much of that money unless it would become a big hit. But I'm not counting on that. I'm just curious to see what it does to the brand itself and to the awareness of the brand in different media. Everything I know is that I'm among the very few German comic artists that are published outside of Germany anyway. So that is a medal that I can stick on my breast.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
Jason, that page is looking pretty good.
Oh, thanks, man. I think I'm done enough to where I won't do anything else on it right now. I'll come back at it and look at it in a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, that looks epic.
It does what I want it to do, so I think I might call it good, unless I see something weird next time I open it up. This was literally the last thing I had to still color on Citra, and this one spread, and everything.
Congratulations!
It's done. Actually, I'm done.
Hooray!
The letters. Woo! You did it.
Way!
Congratulations.
Cool.
It's not the last page, but it's the last page I did.
Yeah, Jason, another Kickstarter, right?
Yes.
Yay.
Wow. I was so confident going into this one, just like, I'm not worried about anything. And then as soon as the morning happens when you got to launch it, it's just like, you just can't be normal anymore.
Yeah. It's this Kickstarter lifestyle that kicks in when the 30 days are counting down.
Yeah.
It's just.
I haven't really put much time into it yet, or obsessed over it too much. I'm purposely trying to stay pulled back from it a little bit.
Get ready to break the refresh button.
Jason, are you using the Kickstarter app on your phone?
No, I deleted it after my last
I remember I don't know, it was not my last Kickstarter campaign, but the first Kickstarter campaign where this app was actually a thing.
Yeah.
And you would get this noise, this little signal when a new pledge arrived.
Oh God!
Oh, no.
Oh God! This was.
And then the real concern is not when you hear the tone; it's the time you're not hearing.
Yeah,
the tone.
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. That was.
That's what's the worst part. If I'm checking it, then I'm always going, "Wait a minute, no one's pledged."
I don't miss it. I don't miss it. I hope I never have to go back to Kickstarter. I hope I never have to do it again.
Yeah, I'm also not eager to do Kickstarter at all. But I wouldn't, of course, never say never to something like that. But yeah, oh God, I really remember one anecdote about Kickstarter. I was recording one of those tutorial videos that I sometimes do for lynda.com, and I was in a hotel room, and one of my Kickstarter campaigns was running. I think it was the last one, I think. And I remember waking up. And most of my backers are normally from America, so waking up for me meant that I slept over all the activity, and during the days normally nothing happens, and during the night everything happens, and when I wake up I have the new pledges normally. And I remember waking up in my hotel room, of course firing up the app, seeing no new pledge overnight, totally bummed out, going under the shower, coming out of the shower, pledge level dropped by $20. And that for me was the moment where I said, never again. Oh, this is so hard.
Oh man.
Oh, this is so hard. But yeah. But it's awesome too. It's
Yeah, I couldn't do what I'm doing without Kickstarter, so I'm really happy that I have it. What I'm really curious about is the next story. Like Sithra's kind of, it's kind of gone its course, and it has its fans and the repeat customers for each book. And I think I'll get a bigger surge for the final one when I can collect it all. But I'm really curious what the next story will be, because that will be my official third story. And I remember one of my old podcasts, someone said that maybe it was Scotty Young, who was like, you got to get through 3 stories. On your third story, that's when it really takes off. I don't know. I don't know if it was him, but it seems like it was. But I don't know. I mean, is it going to be any different than Remind? I know that a lot of people, not people, but companies looked at me with a little bit more, not respect, but giving me more chances after I finished one book. So I don't know, like Webtoons approached me because I had finished a book, and they said, we know you can finish a story and tell it, so we'll give you a chance with your next thing. And then your publisher, Daniel, approached me, I think because I had finished Remind,
Yeah, and they saw you on Kickstarter.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. When it was after I launched Sithra, they were like, because you're doing another book, we realize it's not just a one-hit wonder. I think that's kind of what the words were. It kind of proved to them that I was here to keep making graphic novels. So
you're going to be publishing Sithra through a traditional publisher?
Sithra?
Is it? I mean, yeah, Sithra.
Well, I mean, I self-publish it, so it's like.
Oh, so they approached you, but you were like, no.
Well, no, they printed Remind in Germany.
Oh.
Yeah, in Germany.
Oh, okay.
So that was cool.
That's very cool.
But it was after I launched my Sithra campaign that they approached me. So yeah. So we'll see. I don't know. And actually, Michael and I were talking about
enough books or enough stories. It's just.
Yeah.
Really. I have to say that I'm kind of sneaking out of that scheme by just making just one story.
Yeah.
I'm not really expecting to do any other stories, actually. But maybe it's just maybe it's just a matter of definition. In my definition, maybe every new chapter is a new story. It's just the words you use for that. Every story entity, be it a chapter, be it a book, makes you a better craftsman and get stuff out of your system so that new stuff can get a chance.
Yeah.
I'm actually very curious to see what you come up next with, because I think Sithra is very different to Remind. And I would not be able to make a prediction what a new Jason Brubaker story would look like. Even what world it would be or what theme it would be.
I kind of have some of it scripted out, and I have a lot kind of figured out. I could actually send you like the first 4 issues, I guess. Daniel has like a little script of it. If you're curious, if you want to see it.
I actually wonder if I would prefer to see it in its finished form.
Because I don't have any visuals for it yet. This is the first time I don't have any visuals for a story, and I've actually started writing dialogue. It's very bizarre for me.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I think I could never do that.
Yeah, I didn't think I could either.
Well, but maybe it's the things that you can't imagine to do that should be done.
Yeah, maybe. Well, the next story I'm planning is it's kind of a level up for me with writing that I've never tried to dive into before. And not that it's like better grammar or anything like that, but it's just I have to like figure out like all the things that happen within timelines in order to make it work, you know? And so it just requires a lot of planning before I start. Otherwise I'll waste a lot of time. And because of the nature of the story. So I think I'm doing it because of that. That's probably the only reason. It feels more about that art like I usually would focus on with like Remind was real art heavy. And I was like, well, if the story's broken, people will still like the art. You know?
Yeah.
But this time around I'm really trying to like nail the writing before I get too far into the actually starting the art.
Oh, guys, I'm going to jump out of here.
All right.
It's been great.
Too.
Wow. It is.
And you know what? It's midnight here in Germany, so I think I will need a little bit of sleep now.
Well, I think this sounds like a great place to stop. So thanks, guys, for joining and having most of the conversation.
Daniel, it was really nice to meet you officially.
Yeah, it was
agreed.
For me too, and I really hope that next Wednesday we all will be here again. Would be awesome.
Yeah. I don't know if I'll be at Emerald City Comic Con next Wednesday. I'm going to try to get Wi-Fi in my hotel because it'll be the day we've set up, and so there might be a chance I'll launch it next Wednesday, but maybe not. So if not, it will be the following Wednesday for sure.
We will just take any opportunity that comes up.
Yeah, perfect. All right, guys. We will see you next time.
Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.